Hi everyone, thanks for joining. Today is our December 10th Contributor weekly call, and we are um, going to get started. I think first we're going to wrap up the conversation from earlier. Um,
Yeah, spillover
we-
conversation from the Jupyter AI call that happened right before this. So yeah, I posed it to them as we were talking about a lot of the work that's happening in the Jupyter AI contrib is kind of built on collaborative documents. So server side collaborative documents for the chat, and then and notebooks, and it's expanding to other document types. And so um, what I had posed in that meeting was that I am uh, advocating for us moving in a long-term direction of having the server, the notebook or document models living in the server, not just in the client. And my main motivation is actually not RTC. We keep calling it RTC. That's not the feature to me. The feature is server-side documents. RTC is a feature that benefits from that. But I want the notebook state on the server, um, and in memory on the server. And so it would there's a lot of things that would get solved by that. The trade-off being that it also adds a lot of complexity and a lot of risk in the stack. It's a pretty significant change in the stack. And then if we don't have a rock solid CRDT, the experience, there's all these things we've seen around data loss that could come into play. And so we want to make sure that if we're going to move this thing to core and make the default way our server runs, we better build that. We better make sure that thing is rock solid. Um, and yeah, I guess my point is I'm just trying to pose it as like something I would love, to get some alignment around on whether or not that's what we could do and want to do for the long term of the notebook server, the Jupyter server. And we've talked about how that would impact Jupyter Lite, which it shouldn't. It just would add, APIs for clients that need to use the server for that syncing. Um, yeah, mix emoji.
Zach, do you uh, is RTC and document state in the server uh, inextricably connected in your mind? Do you need RTC to have the document state server?
No,
Okay.
in fact,
Is the implementation in your mind requiring it?
in fact, no, the way that we've implemented it, those are separable things.
Okay.
So RTC is a experience that sits on top of the server side document, but we have a library called Jupyter Server Documents that's just about moving documents to the server, and it works in combination with Jupyter Collaboration. Jupyter Collaboration brings UI that makes the ability for you to share a document and invite somebody in and then show their icons and all that. And we've got some UI, more UI that brings cursors and all those other things. But Jupyter Server Documents is just focused on providing the APIs from the server side to connect to a document with the CRDT, doing the syncing across the front end and the back end.
Wait, so it does require
CRDT.
YPS and CRDT,
Yeah.
but it doesn't require collaboration.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Darren, your hands up.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, I have ideas about this, but I'm curious what your view is on execution of cells. So, just to lay it out for everyone else, the way currently, let's say you don't have RTC, you execute code is your browser opens up a WebSocket connection and sends messages on that WebSocket that are routed to a kernel process, and the kernel process does stuff, talks that stuff over a ZMQ channel to the server, which then sends it up the WebSocket back to you. Um, so if you want the server to have the document state, who do you want to execute code um, that's connected that's inside that document and then to collect it and put it into outputs and distribute, etc.? What's your vision there?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think what you're hinting at is that there's work done in Jupyterverse already for Jupyter's server side execution. Is that kind of what you're hinting at?
No, I mean, yes and no. So, what I'm actually hinting at is if I wanted to have a distributed document in lots of places and in different circumstances, I would no longer want to be bound to a WebSocket because that makes things really complex in certain environments and super
Yeah.
simple in others, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
is it the kind of thing where just to create the experience you want, you have to address this now, or do you sidestep it for now, or what's the strategy here?
Um, I I don't know. I haven't really thought about it the way that we did it. So I think I agree in that I would have the server do the execution, and clients can basically request the server to do that. So it's the server side execution architecture that exists in Jupyterverse. Like that seems to make the most sense to me. That in some sense you treat the server the server state of the document as a little bit higher, um, and it has access to the kernel because that's what's connected to the kernel, and so execution comes from the server. Um, that's not how I implement it in Jupyter Server documents, but it's really easy for me to switch that. Like it just wasn't for me. I was trying to reduce the amount of changes I had to make to the
Sure.
APIs. So I was
No,
basically I'm cheating and using the WebSocket and then intercepting messages. But the pieces that exist in the server for the current implementation we have is really easy to just pivot and say, instead of having these things come in from a kernel WebSocket, have them come in from a post request at a REST API, and then have the server execute from there. And I think that design makes more sense to me. Am I misunderstanding the question?
no, not at all. Yeah, I mean, I think especially in circumstances where the server, the client, and the kernel are all on different machines, this
Yeah.
architecture helps navigate this. Nick, your hand is up.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about this for a spell. JupyterLite's certainly a motivator for it. I mean, I think one of the things that would be helpful uh, is taking this concept of commands and the concept of an app and exposing that. So, Lumino commands, whatever. Were they a good idea? Were they a bad idea? I don't know. We got them. They got schema, sort of. And so if you, in a default orientation, all of those commands execute, in your browser and do browser things. So like when you press the run button, you're running a command. When you press the whatever button, you're running a command. If that bus also extended to the server, you'd be writing exactly the same code and you wouldn't know that you're doing anything different. And so defining that, which we've already kind of done. I mean, you still got to go muck around in some TypeScript to find where those things are. But we could fix that. You could have at least a selection of your static commands in your settings JSON and in your package JSON, which would be the best of all possible worlds because that gets stored forever. And these would start to give us the ability to describe different topologies that abstracted out where the thing's actually going to run. So, I open up my stock lab or stock notebook or stock whatever thing that we want people to be able to build on top of these things without having to resort to terrible hacks. I've got my app. It's running. Everything's running locally. I create a shared workspace as an optional feature. And I say, hey, shared workspace, open this document. And it opens a document. And now that document is open in that server. And if I keep using my unshared instance of that shared document, nothing exciting happens, right? Like it's going to catch up with it however we mangle those. If I start working directly on there, intercept commands to run a cell and pass it over to the server and then come back, you know. And then everything on the bus is all we've already done all the work to describe these things. We just have a few places where we hand back hot DOM instances or hot Lumino instances or something like that. You know, but we could get around that, right? Like those things have IDs. The IDs would exist. We can make them real. They could be real on the server. They can be real on the client. So there's an abstraction of what is an interactive computing tool that we bootstrap off of Lumino commands into something that, you know, can work this way. But I mean, just like blanket making everybody use CRDTs that aren't necessarily going to get any value out of them and might lose data doesn't seem like a good idea. That is all.
So I think those are kind of different things. I totally think commands are probably one of the building blocks of future UIs that are better than our current ones, for sure. But you can do weird things. I wrote a command recently that you call it, it returns to you a closure function that will execute just one time. It's so stateful, everything about, but it's just a command. It's got like, you know, JSON serializable arguments, but what it gives you back is like an instance in memory and very like specific to being inside a JavaScript context, etc. But the using that as the channel that describes actions seems totally reasonable. Using CRDT seems reasonable, actually, right? Like there's lots of nice to have things that we might want that CRDTs will give us for free, like good, robust undo, or like suggestion management, or like, well, frankly, real-time collaboration, which, you know, I don't see the point of, but still, like there's a bunch of things that we'll get for it if we design the data structures and test them and kick the tires and all those things. And I think that's possible. I don't think throwing up our hands and saying that's too complex, we shouldn't do it is, yeah, that's not the conclusion I'm coming to. I don't know. That's all I really have to say.
Are we this is a naive question. And we should move on to a different topic pretty quickly here so we give other folks. But I just are the data loss concerns, are they at the kind of YJS or RJ, whatever the Rust one is called, level, or is it the my experience in running these things in production has been it's been the layer above that that's trying to manage these documents and where they are and who's connecting to them. It's like it's the layer between, you know, above the CRDT that's actually the problem, not the CRDT. Like I haven't seen issues at the CRDT level personally. Like are we actually like concerned that the issue is the CRDT, whether it's the Rust implementation or the JavaScript implementation is causing data loss, or we don't know? Because that's not been my experience. My experience has just been we've been a little bit sloppy on the logic around it.
Yeah, as far as I can tell, it's been client error and not upstream errors. And there have been cases that upstream features have been missing, and we've been frustrated waiting for them to come down. And like there have been that kind of issue. So it's been a back and forth. But in terms of data loss and like integrity and all that, I'm pretty sure that's been us. Perhaps it's time to move on.
Those are great. Yeah, great notes from Mike too and Nick. But okay, cool. Thank you guys. So maybe the last thing I'll just say is I do have a PR in Jupyter Server that I think maybe Vidar even mentioned last week or a couple of weeks ago. That is trying to replace our kernel WebSocket architecture and our kernel managers and multi-managers and all the layers there. in Jupyter Server was something that's better suited for this in the long term. It would allow us to move to server-side execution in the Jupyter server. Like it would allow us to add that endpoint really easily, so we could be consistent with Jupyverse. But it uses only primitives that have been defined in Jupyter Client already. Like we do things in Jupyter Server that like I think just predate Jupyter Client, and then we build all these useful classes in Jupyter Client that we don't use, like kernel client. You know, like the actual thing that's aiming to interface with the kernel, and so I did a lot of work to kind of make that, you know, use the nice APIs that we've created, and then simplify how we connect to it. So it fixes a bunch of leaks. We have a lot of memory leaks and stuff in the Jupyter server today that fixes and stuff. So that PR is, it's still got a lot of work to go. Like I probably won't be able to pick it back up until the new year, till January. So I'll come back and mention it there, and I'll put a lot of energy into getting that thing, you know, robust and ready for final review and acceptance if people see it fit. It would probably require a major release of Jupyter Server to make it be the default. So I think we'll put it into an optional feature, and then start the road to a major release of Jupyter Server sometime next year, where it becomes the default would be my goal. And then after that PR lands, I'd like to start to play around with bringing the actual CRDT into the server, core server. Again, playing around with the idea, do we turn it on by default? Maybe not. But instead of having it be a server extension over here, actually bringing it into the core API somehow. So that's my hope. Yeah, I'll grab a link, Jason.
Thanks, Zach, for sharing, and everyone. I think up next is Mike.
Hi. Um, First up, I wanted to bring up a PR adding opening terminal to the context menu in the file browser in JupyterLab. This is mostly to get more eyes on it. I think it's ready to go. If we do want this feature, I am just not sure about some minor things like whether it should be displayed for both files and directories or only for directories. The position of this item in the menu. If you go to the files changed section, there's like lots of screenshots for different context menus and where it's placed in them, as well as some more technical questions like whether we should put it in the file browser extension or terminal extension. So if anyone has opinions, please do check out this PR. Yeah, I personally don't have a very strong use case for it because I feel like a lot of things that can be done in the terminal can also be done in notebooks. But I understand that some people choose JupyterLab over Jupyter Notebook to have the ability to open a terminal and then having a quick way to open a specific directory, or rather terminal with a specific directory. It can be useful. Think no immediate feedback. The other point is about Google Summer of Code. And this is for now just a reminder that this event exists, and if we want to participate, whether as Jupyter Frontends or Jupyter in general, we should start thinking about that. Last year we did not, both because there were only a handful of potential mentors and because of the transition from non-focus to Linux Foundation, which meant that the support structure that we had with non-focus for handling of the legal formalities was not there, and it was not clear if LF was able to deliver on very short notice. So we would need to make the decision by the end of January or very early February is the deadline for organizations to apply. And on the next meeting, or like first meeting in January, we should have a conversation on who could mentor and whether there is enough interest to apply, either as Jupyter frontends or as a larger group. Yeah, and separately, I will try to bring that to ECA Linux Foundation to see if we actually are able to get the paperwork support to kind of have the place for all of that to happen.
More broadly than that, LF has a number of mentoring programs. Um, we would need the foundation probably to kick in resources, but if mentoring programs is something that we're interested in doing, there's some well-worn pathways at LF for starting up mentoring programs that could be customized maybe more to what Jupyter wanted.
Are any of those like time sensitive?
No, so it's more set up a mentoring program that follows a template that LF has used for quite a few other open source projects, rather than a single program that lots of people are applying to, like Google Summer of Code. So if we wanted a mentoring program, if we felt that yes, we want to do a lot more mentoring in the project, and we just want somebody to help us run a mentoring program, that's something that LF has done for quite a few other open source projects. This is different than we're running a big program like Google Summer of Code, apply to get 1 or 2 slots.
Yeah, makes sense. So I think maybe we could try to focus on Google Summer of Code, because this one kind of has this motivating factor that we need to apply by a given date.
Yeah.
And in case if that doesn't pan out, turns out that there is too much overhead, or that just people are not available in the specific dates when the program happens, then we can explore other. There is quite a few others which also have like a dedicated time slots, and if that doesn't work, we can also explore the Linux Foundation way of doing that.
Yeah, I bring this up because if there's something about Google Summer of Code that you don't want to do because how Google Summer of Code is run, but you do want to do some mentoring, there's other options out there. But yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. We should see what interest there is in doing Google Summer of Code as well.
yeah, and I think that the biggest factor that why people might not want to do Google Summer of Code is just that it happens during the summer, where some people take vacation.
Um, I guess I had one small question about that would be for the Google Summer of Code. Should that be an issue or anything like that, where people would kind of go to um like reply about their interest in participating or anything at all?
Yeah, that's a good question. And also, that's a question could be, where should this issue be? Previously, we had an issue in Jupyter frontends, Team Compass. Um, Maybe we could wait with that until like next time we try to get a show of hands of people who are potentially interested in mentoring. And depending like if there's a larger group from frontends, then we open a Team Compass issue there. If we think that the group who meets there, so frontends, kernel, server, accessibility, if there is a larger group among everyone attending this course, then maybe we should try to have an issue more under Executive Council campus. I'm not sure.
That sounds like a good plan to see more about the interests. Thanks, Mike. Okay, I think up next is Jeremy.
Hey, so last week we discussed having a JupyterLite under the Jupyter frontends umbrella, and one of the outcome was to open another issue to have a proper vote. So I put a link to that issue in case you would like to tick the boxes there. But so far, I think it's looking like most people are fine with this. So I'll probably close it in the coming days, and then move with the next steps, which is most likely just being able to add this Jupyter org to the Jupyter Enterprise on GitHub.
Jeremy, I think it already passes. Everybody's a yes except for 3 people that haven't voted.
Yeah, but with the governance, there is also this requirement of being part of votes. Like 2/3 of the time, I think, something like this. So just to give a chance for people, to tick the box. I
I
think it's
think
one of the.
yeah. So it's supposed to be open for 7 days. How long has it been open?
I think it's tomorrow, so
Okay.
can check tomorrow. Yeah.
So tomorrow. Okay. And ping me. It looks like it'll pass. I can help you with adding it to the Jupyter Enterprise org and whatever else is needed.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. Then I had another point about something we discussed before in one of those calls is publishing to NPM for most. I think the main issue is all of the Jupyter packages that we need to configure. So I'm bringing this up now because it appears that NPM started to enforce granular tokens or trusted publisher this week. I think it was planned to be next week, but probably they toggled the switch earlier. So maybe we can have a look later after at the end of the call. I could show you how everybody could take part of this big party of going to the npmjs.com website and then filling all of the details in the form. So I've done it already for a couple of them. I also formatted the issue so that it should only be a matter of clicking on the link and then configuring the trusted publisher. So if some of you want to do that, please feel free to do it. And check the box once you have configured the trusted publisher for the packages that you would like to tackle. But yeah, otherwise, I'm happy to talk more about that later. And finally, let me see. Yeah, so I looked at the.
Wow. Okay. Sorry, I'm just going to call. There's 100 some odd packages here that need
Yeah,
to have this done. So
yeah.
having some coordinated work on this would be fantastic. Do you have to be part of the releaser group in order to do this?
So you only need to be on the NPM organization in the JupyterLab org on
So
NPM.
anybody in the NPM organization.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if someone wants to do that, but is not part of the NPM org, then I'm also happy to help with this, like maybe giving access. Yeah. And it seems like they are also asking for the 2FA code more often than last time I checked. So it's very, this time it's taking more time to do that, it seems. But yeah. Yeah, the last item I had was about the RSpec PR. Thanks, Jason, for picking this up and making all of the CI pass. So I think the question is, what should we do with this? Like, are people comfortable getting this merged into main? since we still have like the full 4.6 release cycle ahead of us to do like a proper testing. I would personally be in favor of this, but I also agree that it could be a little bit risky and there could be still a couple of things that need to be fixed. But yeah, I'm curious to know what other people think, but it's the same. Like if you prefer to discuss that at another time, it's also fine. Yeah. That's it for me. Yeah, Nick.
I think it's great, but I'd like to see Jupyter Builder move it out of code so that people have a path forward that stays on Webpack, so their stuff isn't guaranteed to break. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what RSpec does. I don't know if it's perfectly API compatible with all the crazy stuff that we need everywhere. But like, if it gonna break, it's gonna break on light. It's going to break on some of the crazy widget stuff out there, right? Because sometimes you got to do crazy things to make things make it to the browser. So yeah, I don't know. I still feel like getting JLPM out of the checked in code, getting all of the node related stuff over into Builder. You cut one version that looks exactly like what we got today. We handle the staging package JSON resolutions with a one-time publishing of all of the historic pins so that you can build the thing that you need, and you can declare that now because you don't have to look inside of Python 3 whatever slash site packages slash JupyterLab slash staging slash, you just look where it goes. You look at node modules and you find it. And what I really haven't looked at there, and it's because it's not going to show up in the PR, is what do the remote entry files look like now? Is it different? Can we make it more sane so that we have a little bit more control over how would you bring a new tool like RSpec or the next flavor next week or whatever? How would you bring PNPM or the next package manager that comes out next week? How would we integrate these things? And really optimize for not breaking people's stuff. So if that means if that means 4.6, JupyterLab still carries a hard dependency on JupyterLab Builder. That's what it is. Like it'll keep working. It's not going to break. We keep all the stuff there. But now we start throwing build time warnings. Let's say in JupyterLab 4.7, you will need to update your build backend to not include all of JupyterLab and all of ZMQ and all that other stuff. Now you can use this other package, and here's some migration stuff, and here's some code mods that'll help you. Like we got to give people a way forward. That's not just like, nope, can't use Webpack plugins anymore. They don't work with whatever version of whatever is going on. It would be brutal. There would be severe attrition. That is all. Thank you.
From what I've seen, it seems like RSpec covers like the 80% use case, the common use cases of Webpack. There are things that Webpack does that it doesn't support, and especially if you're tinkering in the internals of Webpack, clearly it'll be different in RSpec. With it the way it is right now, you could build your extension with JupyterLab 4.5 rather than JupyterLab 4.6 and still have the Webpack building. And it does seem that the RSpec and the Webpack generate compatible module files, so the compatible module federation files. So you can have the RSpec build seamlessly working with the module federation modules that are generated by Webpack. In fact, the Module Federation original author encourages people to move off of the Webpack Module Federation and into what's now in RSpec. He's trying to split Module Federation out of Webpack, and so in a sense, we get an updated Module Federation that's compatible with the Webpack version of Module Federation from the original Module Federation author. This is part of the reason why I would like to. I want to kick the wheels, part of the reason why I'd like to merge and release a 4.6 alpha to start testing. And if we need to then pull it out or revert if there's too many problems that we're seeing with the 4.6 alpha, then that's something that we can address really early in the cycle because we just released 4.5. 4.6 is just starting. So that's a way forward that I would suggest. Nick, you're asking for a huge lift, and I understand like the paramount concern of breaking people. But if we get this early in the cycle and start testing it now, I think we can have a lot of confidence when we release 4.6.
Also, for reference, any widget I think is already using RSpec for the JupyterLab extension, so it's been used already. So it's like the extension is built with RSpec, but used with a Webpack built JupyterLab. And also it has many benefits, I think, for contributors to the JupyterLab code base, will be lower memory usage and faster builds. It's also still nice to take.
Well, I mean, same old thing on Builder. Getting that 3 megabytes of JavaScript vendor out of there would help every user, not just developers, right? Yeah. I mean, that's great. You know, if we rock that out and widgets builds against it and light builds against it and BQ plot is where it gets interesting, right? BQ plot or 3JS, whatever that's called. Because now you're three steps down, right? And that's where things start to fall apart if they don't all work exactly properly together.
Yeah.
So I think we would need to demonstrate something that followed all those steps all the way down, right? So like, here's a running JupyterLite site of Notebook and Voici and Lab with BQ plot and Py3JS all working perfectly. That's then would then be there would at least be enough examples that someone could follow them if they needed to.
Yep. Yeah, RSPack has a goal of being compatible with Webpack. So the other thing is, if we ran into problems, I think we could work with upstream. They might appreciate also the debugging.
That was the case actually in this PR. There were a couple of comments that they are spec developers. So we reported a couple of issues upstream and then they fixed that.
Okay, we're back to Mike.
Yes, I wanted to highlight one more thing, saying that people are very happy to think forward about 4.6. And speaking of how much time we need to find out issues if we merge early in the alpha cycle. So early in 4.5 cycle, I merged a PR, which now I wish I didn't merge so quickly, which allowed to copy paste cells between windows. And it seems to have led to a couple of user-facing issues. Some of those are easy to correct, but others require either reverting this functionality or a very severe redesign. For example, if you cut a cell and then enter an editor and paste inside of an editor, you will get the text representing the cell, not only its source, but like the metadata associated with it, which shouldn't be the case. And the other problem is Firefox, where the privacy settings mean that often actions associated with clipboards require a user to reconfirm either by additional keyboard action or using a mouse. So they can no longer use only JupyterLab context menu to paste a set of cells. And I'm exploring solutions to that, but potentially the most straightforward one is to just revert this functionality for now and make it opt-in like a behind a flag, behind an option. Just thought that this deserves a mention in this call because it has a wide user-facing impact, and it would be something rather unusual for us to walk back on a functional change which was announced in the changelog if we decided to revert it. But there's physically no way to prevent the third of the issues, which is that previously you could copy contents of a cell and copy a cell and then independently paste the cell and then paste the contents of a cell without overwriting each other. So there were two registers. One was internal register for the cells operations, and the other was the system native clipboard for text operations, like whatever you copy in the editor. I've linked the issues in the notes and I'm also pasting them in the chat.
From your description alone, I haven't read the issues, sorry. I think you're right to think of reverting it. If it's just a new feature and the new feature is buggy, that seems okay. But this is a new feature that makes JupyterLab less accessible. So, and it makes bugs that you wouldn't have encountered doing fairly normal things. So, yeah, I think you were saying your plan is to revert. If that's your plan, thumbs up. If you're asking what you think you should do, I think you should revert.
Yeah, I don't have a solid plan yet. I'm exploring both options, and yeah, that's very good to hear, an encouragement that this is fair play too. Well, I wouldn't completely revert the PR and just make this opt-in, the new behavior opt-in.
Sure, yeah, especially if we see a future for this behavior. If it just turns out fundamentally either it's going to be a bad experience in Firefox because of their security model or there's some insurmountable thing, then maybe that will be discovered for the people who are opting in and playing with it. But yeah, your approach is more cautious. That makes sense. As long as it's not going to hit people by default.
Thanks, Mike, for sharing. If there are no other comments, I think there's a call out for JupyterLab PR triage from Jason.
Yeah. So I both was shopping around the possibility of creating a new meeting in the next 2 weeks and canceling 2 meetings in the 2 weeks after that. So first, maybe the easy one. Any objection to canceling the December 24th and December 31st meetings? That, iterations of this meeting. I think Rosio is expressing assent. Okay, good. No objections, and several people plus oneing it. So I'll go ahead and delete them off of the calendar. There are quite a few PRs that are backing up. I think Mike mentioned this a couple of weeks ago that the review queue is getting overwhelming for the few people that are currently reviewing. And so the suggestion was that we have something that helped mentor people into reviewing more PRs. For example, a meeting where we just review PRs live to help people kind of see what goes into the review process and get more comfortable reviewing PRs, as well as just triaging PRs that we can focus our reviews on and start moving the queue. Is there interest in setting up a meeting later this week or next week to do some live PR review / triaging? Yes.
I would be interested in joining.
Yes. And yes. Okay. I've heard 3 yeses so far. Okay. How do we coordinate a time? We could do it right after this meeting, for example. That would be an easy time to do it, though it's sort of late for our European friends. We can't do it right before this meeting because of the AI meeting that happens right before this meeting. We could also the triage meeting. We have a triage meeting on the calendar. Can we take over some of that time?
I think that would be fair. It's been pretty like short, not a lot of issues in the past
Okay.
week. So we end early, and then triaging, I think maybe it's also something that we can do like uh, outside of the meeting as well. Some people have participated in that way where they're not actually attending the meetings. Like,
should we see if we can, Rosio, as a representative of the Jupyter triage meeting? So when is it again?
it's on Tuesdays at 9 a.m. So the same hour on Tuesdays.
Okay. This time slot yesterday. So in 6 days, I guess. Does that work for people? Is there, I can be there. Is there enough people that can be, well, I can be there for half of it. Is there enough people that can be there that, that is useful?
I can be there, but it's one person. So there is also another option that I would mention is the old Jupyter Server and kernels meeting time tomorrow, an hour before this. I think that used to be a meeting hour, so maybe it's also a little bit earlier for people in Europe.
Yeah, just a quick show of hands. Does directly after this meeting, or not show of hands, you just put it in the chat, or a week minus a day, next Tuesday during the same time slot, or I guess tomorrow, the hour before this time slot. Any preference?
For me personally, either after this meeting or tomorrow work particularly well.
Anybody else? Thank you, Ely. Is this would it be too late for the European folks to do it after this meeting?
Are you proposing after the meeting today? Because
Probably next week. Next week.
More sense.
Yeah, we're starting to get the holiday. Okay. How about I'll create an issue. We can just quickly coordinate, and I'm happy to do something, not today, but either tomorrow or next week. I'm happy to just sit down and be there. If there's at least one other person that's a regular reviewer, I think that could be there, then I think we'd have a good critical mass. All right, I'll open it up an offline issue, an async issue for this. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. And we are just about 4 minutes from the end of the hour. So I will stop the recording, and then we can have a few minutes for off the record conversation if there's any. Thanks everyone for joining, and we will see you here next week.